let's just dive right in. I absolutely loved reading your book because for me it was sort of like an inside take. In these unions, something that a lot of us just don't have any experience with. We're kind of on the outside looking in, and we have no idea what teachers have to go through when they're forced to join a union and what it's really like inside of that union. So, what were your experiences like when you first had joined the teachers union?
Well, when I first joined, it was bad, but my first horrible experience was when I was still a student teacher. I hadn't even joined yet. And I had an outstanding master teacher, taught me incredible things. She loved the children and they thrived under her care. But next door to us was a woman who was abusive to the kids. She would grab them and yank them, and she would scream right into their little faces. I was 22. I was terrified. They were 6. They came up to her waist. And this was just as she was putting them in line after recess. So I don't know what was going on behind closed doors, but what we could witness was abuse enough, in my opinion, for the authorities to come and remove her. But they never did. She continued teaching until she chose to retire. And I think that's wrong. When I became a teacher, when I was forced, not forced to join, but forced to fund, and the fees I had to pay were only $50 less than the full dues. When I had to join, my first negative experience, was we had a voucher initiative in California, and I believe in school choice. And the unions told me that I had to march and phone bank and do everything to defeat vouchers. And I said, well, no thank you. I'm pro-voucher. I believe they're good for the taxpayer. I believe they're good for families and children. I think they're good for teachers too. They give us all choice. And so right there, during a mandatory staff meeting, they told me, well, you're a radical right-winger. And then they treated me like dirt the rest of the school year, and they made sure that other people wouldn't talk to me. They made sure that I was isolated. They're experts at that. And made me really uncomfortable. So that was just one of many.
Yeah, and one of the things that really surprised me, and I didn't know about you, Rebecca, before I read your book, is that you became a union leader. And I think that would probably surprise a lot of people in this room. Why did you become a union leader, and what was that experience like?
Well, I became a union leader because, as I told you before, I didn't have to be a member and pay their dues, but I had to accept their representation and pay their fees. And the difference between dues and fees was very small. And when you were a fee payer, you were paying 100% of all collective bargaining, but you didn't get invited to collective bargaining, you didn't get to vote in collective bargaining, you didn't have a voice, you couldn't serve as a leader. So I thought, okay, I'm paying this money anyway, why don't I join and try to change things from within? And by the way, my other teacher friends agreed with me. They didn't think we should be bullying everybody. Teachers don't agree with all the stuff you see on TV that the teachers' unions do. That's the teachers' unions and their union activist teachers that they plant in schools to beat up on real teachers like me. I call it real teachers versus teacher union activists. So I just decided, hey, I'm going to get on the inside and try to make some change. I was very naive in those days. And I served as a union leader on the executive board for 3 years of my local association. And I discovered that the teachers at my local agreed with me. They didn't like all these bad things that were going on, but we were voiceless. Every time we spoke up, we were bullied. Even when I went to a state level meeting, we just asked, is there a way teachers can have a voice in the way our money is spent? We don't like the way it's spent on politics. We were shut down, bullied, basically told that we were bigots. They didn't use the word bigot, but they made us feel like bigots, and told us that the union's way is the only way to think, and that their politics are the only right way, and that there was something wrong with us if we didn't agree with that. So that was my experience as a union leader, and there's a whole lot more stories, a lot of bad things that happened, so I finally realized that even serving from within, I couldn't make a change. I tried to make a change at my school board level. I tried to make a change at my school level. I would talk to my principals and they would say, I pick my battles. Everyone was terrified of the unions. So I started writing editorials to expose them just to my community in Orange County, California. And 6 months later, I was lead plaintiff in a federal lawsuit. Best thing that ever happened to me. Was I afraid for my life? Yes. Did I let that, consume me? No. My husband is the one I was most worried about. Bless him. He's the greatest man. His name is Charles. And when I first found out I could take the case, the first thing I did, I have Charles and I have 2 sons, Kyle and Ben. First thing I did, Charles, I have an opportunity to sue the teachers' unions, blah, blah, blah. I didn't even finish the sentence. Yes, do it, okay? He's been a professor for 42 years. He knows. He paid $1,200 a year in non-member fees to the union, and they filed grievances against him because he was the director of the school. He couldn't fire bad teachers. He knows the problems with union. Our sons, one was still in high school, one was at Long Beach State, unionized schools. I asked them. I couldn't even finish my question. Go for it, Mom. Our younger one said, they touch my car, I'm taking them out. It's his first car. So we were all a little afraid. We thought they would do things like run me off the road. None of those things happened, thank God. But our friends put a security system on our home. Thank God they did, because we didn't have the money to do that. They put cameras around our home to protect us, and thankfully we still have those things. But my husband, I mentioned, he would have nightmares. And that was the saddest part. I felt sorry for him. And he would kick me in his sleep, so then I would wake up. And I would always ask him, what's going on? Well, these guys are chasing you. These mean people are chasing you, and I'm after them, So I, bless him that he would kick me. But I'm grateful to him for sticking up for me.
Well,
when we were preparing to bring the Janice case, we talked to many government workers who objected to having the government take their money. But so many of them backed out at the last second because they talked to their spouse, and their spouse says, what are you, crazy? One of the unions coming after us in our house here and everything? And you really kind of can't blame them because they're looking out for themselves. They think they could be harmed or their family could be harmed. And so we're so fortunate to have a few people like Rebecca and like Mark Janice who are actually willing to stand up and do that. And really, in this whole fight to free teachers and government workers, they have been the most essential figures, because there's lots of lawyers that could argue these kinds of issues, but very few people who would be willing to put their names out there and take the case all the way to the Supreme Court, make themselves the face of a movement like that, and be the target of all these union attacks. So really can't appreciate that enough. Well, if you could, you mentioned that you went from writing a letter to the editor to being a plaintiff in this potentially landmark case in like 6 months. How did you get from one point to the other? How did you end up being a plaintiff in this lawsuit?
The short answer is God, but the long answer, it really is. I mean, I was doing my Bible study every morning, and there was a question that stared me in the face, and that was, is there something you're supposed to be doing, but you haven't done it? And I knew I was supposed to be writing. And I was scared. I wasn't scared to tell my story. I just didn't have any connections to newspapers. Because it wasn't a letter to an editor, it was an editorial. And I didn't even know how to send it in. I was clueless. So anyway, I did those things. But I think when God leads you to do something, when I said, God, I don't have any connections, he led me to that story of the widow's mite in the New Testament when Jesus saw this widow putting 2 mites in the offering. It's like 2 pennies. And he said she just gave more than any of the wealthy because she gave out of her nothingness. She gave out of her faith. And that was used in my heart to, the message to me was, Rebecca, just give me your 2 mites. I'll take care of getting you in the newspaper. So I did. I wrote the editorial. The first one got rejected. And so I knew I was just a loser. But I kept trying, and I, honest to God, really don't know how it happened, except that I was a member of Christian Educators Association International because I was a non-member fee payer and I needed liability insurance, and they sent an email out one day looking for plaintiffs. And I said, please pick me. I was so nervous they were going to reject me. And because I had written those editorials and I had done my research, the lawyers picked me as a lead plaintiff because I knew my stuff, and I wasn't afraid.
So you were the lead from the beginning. It was always going to be the Friedrichs case.
Well, yeah, you'll find out in my book that I didn't know it was going to be called the Friedrichs case. I thought it was going to be like Teachers versus California Teachers Association. And so I'm reading the press release, which I was part of making the press release, but I never saw the name of the case. And I'm reading the Orange County Register with my husband, and I go, Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association. I literally called my lawyer. Made a mistake here. It says Friedrich. You're the lead plaintiff? I mean, I knew I was the lead plaintiff, but I didn't know it was going to be named after me. Duh. How stupid. I knew cases were named after people, but there were 10 of us, so I thought it was going to be teachers, you know? And that's when I found out that I was named after me.
And at the time you brought your suit, the U.S. Supreme Court precedent was against you. It said that these fees were okay. Did you fully appreciate at that time that getting into this meant you had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to win, and so for it to mean anything, you'd have to be at that high-profile level and have that attention?
Yes, I understood it from day one. No, I didn't understand it from day one. You know? I understood the idea, but I had no idea what it would be like. And my family and I, we were excited from the first day, and we had amazing attorneys, so we were in good hands.
And I guess, so probably the lower courts were probably pretty uneventful. You probably just lose there pretty quickly and move up because Supreme Court precedent is against you. So I guess now we can go to the Supreme Court experience and what it was like for you showing up at the court on the day of arguments and seeing the people waiting outside and hearing the justices. What impressions do you have from that day?
Yeah, it was an out-of-body experience, really. You know, you get there. My biggest worry, my lawyers had told us, well, we're going to have to walk through the mobs of union picketers. And I said, well, then I got to buy a wig. And I never bought a wig. And so thank God State Policy Network had gotten us a van and took us around the back. So, because my lawyers were telling me, we're going to get out of a taxi. I was like, are you crazy? These people are dangerous. Anyway, we went around the back. And from the moment we walked in, it was just the most humbling experience. My younger son got to be with me. We don't, believe it or not, my own husband did not get a ticket to his wife's oral arguments because there's a limited number. And we only had 7 or something, and 6 plaintiffs wanted to come. So there was one, no, actually there wasn't one extra. One of my attorneys gave us his ticket, and he went up and sat in that lounge, lawyer lounge, so that either my husband or my son could come. Well, my husband, if you ever met him, total servant, loving person. There wasn't even a conversation. He said, of course, your son will be with you in the court. So my husband stood in line at 5 o'clock in the morning in the freezing cold with none other than Mark Janis standing right next to him. They met that day. So my son and I are in there, and the 2 things that stand out to me the most, the sweetest memory, is we're standing in the security line, and if looks could kill, I'd have been flat dead on the floor because of all those union people. Somehow they had a lot more tickets than we did. And they were giving me all these stink eye. And my son, who was, he's 23 now, so he was 21 at the time, and he looked so dapper. He had in his suit. He's a handsome young man. He says, Mom, these people are looking at you really mean. What do you want me to do? And I told him, nothing. I'll just smile at them, and you pretend you're my Secret Service agent. And he did. He goes. And so for the whole time we were in the courtroom, because they were shooting them at me the whole time, they were sitting all around us, he kept doing that. It was so great. That was a great experience. And then the second was, I think the most memorable, the weirdest feeling was when Justice Roberts said, today we will hear case number 9, whatever, blah, 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 Rebecca Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association and all that. My whole body just, I'm tingling saying it. It's the weirdest thing. Your name in the United States Supreme Court. It was just humbling and thrilling, and to know we had people outside cheering for us. It was just nothing like it. I'll never top that experience, except getting the Janis win on my birthday.
Yeah, on that day when we got the news of Justice Scalia, it was like 3 very rapid shocks. First it's, oh, the great Justice Scalia has died, and that's sad and shocking. But within a couple of seconds of that, it's, oh, the Friedrichs case is ruined. And then within a very short time after that, it's, oh, I think it's going to be us. If the Friedrichs case isn't it, we're up next. And in fact, that's how it played out. It didn't have to play out that way. We were fortunate in some respects. We were fortunate, of course, that Hillary Clinton wasn't appointing Justice Scalia's replacement, because then the court would have had no reason to take another Friedrichs-type case, because presumably the the conservative justices would not think they would win, and there would be no reason to mess with the status quo. And then you had to get another justice timely nominated and timely confirmed, and as it happened, so after the Friedrichs case fell through, our case, which was already pending in the federal district court, our case was already underway. It was just frozen because we all just thought Friedrichs was going to resolve this issue for us, and that would be the end. But then, after the Friedrichs case fell through, it was unfrozen, and suddenly we proceeded very quickly. The government and the unions moved to dismiss our case. They said, well, they have to lose because the Abboud decision is against them, and we had to agree. We had to say, yes, we're right, dismiss us, and let us move on. And so we went to the Court of Appeals, and very quickly they said, yes, we should lose at this level. Go ahead and rule against us. Go ahead and do it now. And we got our decision from the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals just a few weeks, I think, before Neil Gorsuch was confirmed as a new justice on the Supreme Court. And so that meant that our petition asking the Supreme Court to take the case arrived just as Neil Gorsuch was taking the bench and the court was in a position to take the case. And so if that timing hadn't been perfect, we might not have been in a position to put this before the court, and the unions might still be taking these fees now. So we're very fortunate in those respects. We're also fortunate in another respect in that the unions in our case made a strategic error. They asked the court to dismiss our court right away, dismiss our case, right away, when they wouldn't have had to do that. They could have just, instead of moving to dismiss our case, dragged it out and said they need to take discovery from us, and we could still be in the federal trial court now for all we know if the unions hadn't tried to dismiss our case right away. And I think the reason they did that was because they were so sure that Hillary Clinton would win the election and they had nothing to worry about in the Supreme Court. Which goes to show you shouldn't take things for granted in litigation, but always fight as though things won't work out your way that aren't in your control. So we were very lucky that all that lined up. And so when the court came back after its summer break last year, it agreed to take the case. And then we proceeded to have arguments early this year and then get the win in June of this year.